and then I'm going to press the tab key. Now in this cell I'm going to type in the next few entries. So in C3 I'm going to type in Chamber City, then I'm going to press tab. Now notice that even though it seems like part of the text is going to be cut off right here, like the word city shows up in cell D3, that the word city is actually not found in here. If I look at the formula bar, which doesn't lie, okay, I can see that there's nothing there. As a matter of fact, all I have to do is actually widen this column to get to see that actually the text is inside cell C3. Okay, so now I go to cell D3, and in there I'm going to type in Batonsville. Press tab once again, type Sable Village, press tab again, type Strongville, press tab again, type in Town of Cary, press tab again to go to H3, and in here we're going to type in the word total. And now I need to say that I'm done. I could click the check mark right here, which means enter, and when you use this you stay in the same place. Okay, so I'm entering the text in there. Next I'm going to enter the row titles. So I'm going to go to cell A4. Now I could go to cell A4 by pointing and clicking at A4. I can also go inside the name box, and if I click in here and I type A4 and hit enter, that also takes me to that particular cell. Type corporate. Once again, if I hit enter, it takes me to the next lower cell, or I can also use the down pointing arrow. Then direct mail, down pointing arrow, fund runs, down pointing arrow, government, down arrow, phonathon, down arrow, and then total. And now I'm going to click the check mark right here to say that I want to enter that text. The next thing that I'm going to do is, starting at cell B4, I'm going to enter all the numbers that are shown on page 13 of the Excel chapter 1. So I'm just going to go ahead and enter the numbers. As you enter each one of the numbers, hit enter to go down to the next lower cell, and then you can go over to the first entry on the next column and enter the numbers in there. As you enter the numbers, don't worry about the fact that these are thousands. We're going to change the way those numbers look later on. The only thing that you need to make sure is that you put period and then the decimals if the number is shown to have decimals. Notice once again that as you're typing numbers in here, it seems like part of the text is getting cut off. Do not worry about that. We're going to change the width of the columns later on. So for now, just enter the numbers and the text, and later on we'll make everything look pretty. Once you have entered all the values for the different cells, what we're going to do next is to then calculate the sum for each one of the columns. Now before we do the actual sum, let's just review what we have right here. This is a business that does fundraising. Now what they have in here is the different towns to which a river goes through, and these are the amounts of money that have been collected for all those different cities. Now there's different types of money collected: corporate, direct mail, and so on. So this is the means of collection. These are the cities that it was collected for. Now what we're going to do right now is figure out how much money was collected for each one of the towns, and then what is the total that was collected for corporate, direct mail, and so on. The first thing that we're going to do is to go to the cell where we want to have the total for a specific group of numbers. So if I want to find the total for this group of numbers, I'm going to click right here at B9. There are many different ways in which we can ask Excel to give us the sum of these numbers right here. Now, one way is going to be to go to the Home tab, to the Editing group, and in here we have this funny looking E, which is called the Auto Sum. And if I click at the symbol itself, it will give me the function that has to do with sum. But instead of doing that, I'm going to click the little arrow to the right of it, so that we get to see the different options in here. Now, the first option is sum. Now, these are called functions. When you work with Excel, you can ask Excel to do calculations for you in one of two ways. One is you can create a formula, and the second way is for you to ask for a function. Now, functions are formulas that are part of Excel. So in here, if I say give me the sum, Excel is going to want to know the sum of what group of numbers. So if I click sum, Excel says give me the sum of what, and then in parentheses it's got what is called the range. Now by default, since my cursor was here inside the cell, it looks for the closest group of numbers associated with that cell. So it picked up the numbers right on top of the cell B9. Now it says that it's going to give us the sum starting at B4 and ending at B8. Always keep an eye on this range, because sometimes Excel doesn't get it right away. So in this case, it says give me the sum, parentheses, starting at B4 and ending at B8. So at this point, I could hit the enter key, or I could click the check mark in here, and it says that the sum of all these numbers is 243,335.9. Now notice that we never wrote that number in here. If I look at the formula bar, that never lies to you, it tells you exactly what was done in that cell. I could also have asked for the sum of these numbers in other ways. Let me just delete the entry in here, and let me do it in a different way. If you know the name of the function that you would like to use, you could start typing the function. So if I put equal sum, now it says I'm asking for the sum, and then I say the sum of what. So you open parentheses, and then you can click inside the first cell that you would like to include in this sum, and then while holding the button on the mouse down, you scroll down and you select the range. So it says from B4 to 84, and now you can close parentheses and then click the check mark. So that's the second way. Let me press delete again. Another way is to do it directly through the keyboard. If you do alternate, hold down the alternate key and then the equal sign, that's a keyboard shortcut for the auto sum right here. So if you do that, okay, and then you press the check mark over here, or you do alternate equal again, that basically gives you the total inside that cell. What we had asked Excel to do for us in here is basically the following. Inside cell B9, we said we would like you to give us the sum, and then we said the sum of what, and we said the sum of the 5 numbers on top. Now if I go to this cell right here, I would basically be giving the same instruction as what I did in here. So I would be saying give me the sum, and then it would say the sum of what, and we would say the sum of the 5 numbers on top. Since the instructions are the same, I can take advantage of a feature which allows me to copy not the results but the instructions within a cell. That's called the fill handle. I call it the copy feature. Now notice that when you point inside a cell, you will see when you point inside the cell that white cross, okay, and that white cross basically means select. But when you point at the edge of it, you see the crosshair with the pointy ends. That one means move. But when you point at the bottom right hand corner, you notice that there's a little dot in there. When you point at the little dot, that one is basically the copy command. You're copying the instructions within that cell. The book calls it the fill handle. So if I click here and then I drag this over to the right, I'm saying copy those instructions here and here and here and here and in here. I then let go, and now I got my results in every single one of those cells. Notice that if I point and click at cell C9, it's going to say give me the sum of the 5 cells on top, and then on D9 the sum of the 5 cells on top, and so on. We're now going to perform the same calculation for the total column right here. So I'm going to click at H4, but this time I'm going to take a little shortcut. What I'm going to do is to select the range first. I'm going to say from H4 I click inside the cell, click, hold the finger on the button down, and then scroll down. And as I scroll down, I see that this area right here is selected. Whenever you select a group of cells, the first cell always looks clear, the other cells will look shaded. Now once I do that, I can go to the auto sum, and if I click the icon in here, that funny looking E, I will then be asking for the auto sum. Now remember that Excel always looks for the group of numbers closer to the particular cell. In this case it's going to be this group of numbers. So if I do that, it now gives me, I'm going to click at H4, it says the group of numbers, give me the sum from B4 to G4, and you see those are all the numbers that were 2, it's left. If I click at H9, I see the same thing, from B9 to G9. At this point we should be saving our work. So I'm going to go into File and then click Save. And remember that every time that you ask for save, and this is the first time that you save your work, that will automatically take you into the Save As screen. So it took me into the Save As. Now make sure you save your work in your flash drive or wherever it is that you want to store all the exercises that you're going to be creating. The first thing that we need to do is to change the name from book 1. We're going to call this Save Sable River Foundation. And as you type, it will erase whatever was inside the file name text box. The next thing to do is to say where we want our work to be saved. So I'm going to point to my flash drive. I'm going to scroll down here. I'm going to go to pen drive G, and now I'm going to find the folder where I want this to be saved. And now I'm going to click Save. So now I see that this has been saved, because it says right here at the top, Save Sable River Foundation.exe.